So thanks, Justin, for joining us this morning or your afternoon. So today we're talking about IQBot through Automation Anywhere, and you're going to tell us kind of about the specific business challenge that we're solving today.
Yes, so we've had a client we've been speaking to in the last couple of weeks that have an insurance company, a general insurance company, and they have a claims process where they have incoming claims documents called first notice of loss. These documents come in which kind of outline what the policyholder is actually claiming for. And what they do is they'll take that document and they'll manually copy and paste the contents of that document into their claim system. But what they also do is they then go away and find the policy holder information, which is also in a set of documents, and they also copy and paste that into into their claim system. So they kind of locate this information from two documents, aggregate it together by copy and paste in effect, and then submitting it. So what this demo basically demonstrates is using IQBot to digitize the documents, extract that information, and then using RPA to essentially stitch that kind of process together. So integrating with IQBot, amalgamating that data or aggregating it, and then presenting kind of a single view of that data.
So I think removing the copy paste is a really great
Yes.
use for RPA. So in this demonstration, you've mentioned you're going to use IQBot. We've talked about IQBot on this channel before. Can you tell me a little bit about why people are gravitating towards this tool right now?
So IQBot is an OCR engine in effect, and what it does is it takes semi-structured data, PDFs or images, and allows you to make extract it into a structured format that you can then programmatically process and do something with. And OCR engines, under the covers can be quite complex, machine learning algorithms and APIs. And what IQBot is very good at is abstracting up that complexity into something which I'm not going to say completely non-technical users can use, but people who they understand the documents, they understand what the documents, how they're structured, and then it provides tooling which is easy enough for them to train the algorithms to extract the data from those documents.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you share your screen and give us the demo, and then I got some questions at the end. You know me.
Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the process very quickly. Excellent. So what I'm going to do very quickly, I've described the process, but I'm going to visually show you the main parts and how it's broken up between A2019, which is the RPA platform, and IQBot. So the trigger is these first notice of loss documents that come in via email. They are submitted, and A2019 is going to monitor the inbox and the unread emails. It's going to download the attachments and upload those to IQBot. Now, the customer has both English and Portuguese documents, so we are pushing the documents to the appropriate learning instance, one which understands Portuguese, one which understands English, and I'll go through this in a bit more detail later on, so we'll just sort of kind of glide over this for the moment. Once we've uploaded those documents, then we download the actual results of that extraction. Now, for every policy number in the first notice of loss document, we are then using that number to locate the contract of insurance document, which contains the policyholder information, and we're then uploading that document to IQBot. And again, that is both in English and Portuguese. Once we've completed that process and we've got the results of both of those documents for that policy number, we're then merging that data together into kind of a single data structure, which will then subsequently allow us to view that information as if it's inside a claim system. So whilst this demo is just a simple form showing the data together, actually RPA is capable of calling web services or insert into a database all of this data wherever it needs to go. So what I'm going to do very quickly is I'm going to quickly show you some of the documents, just so you've got an idea of what the documents look like and their structure. So the first notice of loss document is a fairly simple document, and it contains general policy information, and it contains loss information, so the date of loss, the type of loss, estimated loss amount, etc. And the contract of insurance document is a fuller document which contains information about the policyholder. So basic policy information, and then it goes down into more information about the risk, details, liabilities, the limits and things that are on their policy.
Okay.
So without further ado, we'll actually go into the demo itself. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to log into the control room. And the control room is where I'm going to run my bot from. And that bot is then going to run on this machine, and we can go through the forms. And it's also worth pointing out, you will see lots of forms as part of this demo, sort of visualization, because IQBot is very much a background unattended process, but we're actually using the RPA interactive forms to display what's going on through the process. So I'm not going to talk about that in any detail today, but in case people are wondering what those forms are, is actually the interactive forms that are part of the product.
And so when you put in those interactive forms, was it more just for this demo, or in real life, if you were doing this process, would you be using those interactive forms?
You could do, if you say you had a claims operative and they needed to interact as part of this process. So for example, it could be that IQBot has extracted some information. It then needs to present a form for them to maybe add more information that we can't extract electronically and be part of that process. Then yes, you would display a form. Otherwise, it's just an unattended background process. Okay. But yes, primarily it's just for the basis of this demo.
Yeah, we've talked a lot on this channel about attended versus unattended bots. So I encourage anybody who is questioning what the difference is to go watch those videos on attended and unattended.
Yeah, I think Dan's done some good videos on that. So, right, so I'm going to run this bot. And the first thing it's going to do is, so we've got this email inbox. So we've got these first notice of loss attachments, okay, and this is our trigger for the process to start. So the first thing we're going to do, I'm just going to move that bar out of the way, there we go, is download those attachments from the email inbox. Okay. So the actual customer has different sources of information. They have sources of information that come from emails, that come from online web forms, and other kind of channels, but this is the area that they wanted to focus on. So we've downloaded those documents and we can view those documents here. Okay, so these are the documents that I showed you just a minute ago. Then what we're going to do, so just to prove that we've got some Portuguese ones here, we've got an English one there, and we've got a Portuguese document here, okay, in Portuguese. The structure's the same, it's just that the fields and obviously the language is different.
Okay.
Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload those documents to IQBot. And what this is going to do is this is going to pass it to our learning instance, the PDF documents, and it's then going to extract the information, and then we're going to download the results. So we've uploaded the documents, as you can see there in the progress bar. We've checked whether the results are available, and the results are available, so we've now downloaded those.
And so again, in real life, we wouldn't necessarily be seeing this screen unless we were working with an attended bot.
Correct.
This would be more running in the background. We wouldn't even know. We would just be presented with our work later.
Correct, yes. This would be typically running inside a data center rather than somebody's desktop if it was a completely unattended scenario. So what we can do here now is we can actually look at the extracted data. So these fields here, and I'll show you this a little bit later on in a bit more detail, but these fields here represent the fields that we've set up in our domain when we build the learning instance in IQBot. So you define fields that you want to extract, and then you train the OCR engine to locate the data for each of these fields. Okay. Again, I'll show that in a bit more detail, but we've got the data is extracted there. We've also got the data for one of the documents, which is Portuguese. Again, the field names are the same, but we've got aliases which look for Portuguese equivalents of these fields, and it's able to pull out the Portuguese for that document.
Nice.
Now what we're going to do, excuse me, is we're going to upload the contract of insurance documents to IQBot. So for every first notice of loss CSV file that we've downloaded, we're going to unpack that data, we're going to find the policy number, and we're then going to look up the contract of insurance document for that policy. For the purposes of demo, it's just on the file system, but that could also be in a document management system or any other kind of content management system that you might have. And then we're going to extract the data from those documents.
Nice. So in this world, we're using the policy number as kind of the key to connect
Right.
the actual loss and their policy. So an end user who was telling us about their loss wouldn't have to upload their policy. That's in our systems. We're automatically going to connect those two.
Correct, that's right. Yes, exactly. So this is going to take a few seconds, but essentially what we're doing is we're uploading, checking whether the results are available, and if they are, we then can kind of process them. So while that's running, just to explain how this works in terms of the integration with IQBot, it is an asynchronous process. So when you're uploading documents to IQBot, you upload it file by file. Then on the server, it effectively queues that up. So if you've got huge volumes, you've got this queuing mechanism, which is queuing up all these documents, and then the engine will take the next request off the queue. It will attempt to extract that data, and if it can, it then makes it available to download. Okay. But that's an asynchronous process. So at some point in the future, you'll get the results back. Yeah. That might well be a successful extraction. It might also be an unsuccessful extraction. It could be that actually the document, it can't extract all the fields, in which case it goes into a queue, which in the IQBot portal, the user can go in, complete the mapping, mark it as done, and then it's available for download as well. So there's different scenarios, but I'll touch on that, how that works under the covers in a little while. So what we've got here is our CSV results. I just picked one up kind of random, really. And again, this is data extracted from the contract of insurance. So the next stage now would be to take this information, the first notice of loss information, and actually bind that together, amalgamate that together, and provide a kind of a single view of that data. And that's really as simple as displaying this form. So in this form, we can select our policy number, and then we can display the information. So this first kind of segment up here is our first notice of loss information taken from the first document, and the policyholder information is kind of the data taken from the contract of insurance document. And we can see that, you know, if we select different policy IDs, this is the Portuguese version, for example, then we can see that information. And at this point in real life, you would then push this into in their case, a claim system, either using RPA to do that via interacting with the screen, or if there's an underlying API, use a REST service call, for example, to push that data into the system that way. And that's the end of the demo.
Okay, so why don't you tell me a little bit more about the background of this? So I know you talked about if we'd failed to read or failed to be able to get into that. I know that there's in IQBot something called confidence intervals. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about how you built it and what you built?
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll log into the IQBot portal. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the instances that we've created already, okay, because they're more complete. And then I'll quickly show you a very kind of rough training process, if you like, just to sort of show you, roughly how that kind of works. So if we go into our bots, for example, so just to explain the structure here, we've got learning instances, okay? So these learning instances, think of that as kind of the high level OCR engine instance. So we've got 4 here, as you can see. Our insurance demo, contracts of insurance, we've got one for contracts of insurance Portuguese, and the same for first notice of loss, English and Portuguese. But underneath the covers, what it actually creates are bots. And these bots are related to groups of documents in that learning instance. In our case, we've only got one group of documents, but it could be that under that umbrella, you might have different documents that contain the same kind of information, but they have different fields which represent the information. So it then splits it into groups, and then you have to train each group individually. But we've got just one group per document because we've only got one document type. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this back to staging so we can then edit that bot. And I'm just going to show you kind of the structure of the mappings and how that works. So this is our document, and we've already mapped these fields, of course. So let's pick up policy number here. Okay, so we've got policy number. So when we're training our learning instance or creating it, we create this thing called a domain, and the domain contains the fields that we are looking to extract. There's 2 ways of doing that. There is creating the domain inside the portal. You can also create a domain by creating a JSON payload, if you like, and using a REST API to upload that. And this domain, I actually used the REST API. So I'm just going to quickly show you this. So this is an example of this in contract of insurance across. This is the contract of insurance domain. Okay, so we can see here we're supporting 2 different languages, English and Portuguese. And then we've got these field definitions. And these field definitions basically say we're looking for something called a policy number. It's a form field. So in IQBot, you can also extract tabular information, so repeated elements. But for this demo, we're not doing that. We're just putting out form fields. And we can define the format, which is text. There's different formats. You could have text, dates, checkboxes, etc., etc. Then down here, we've got this thing called aliases. And what an alias does, it basically says, if I can't find a field called policy number, I'm looking for equivalents. So in this case, English is policy number, but in Portuguese, it's, and I'm not going to attempt to say it because I don't want to sound silly, but that's the Portuguese equivalent, okay? So when we go back to here, what we've done is we've created the learning instance, and we've now got our domain, which is available, and these are all the fields that are defined in that domain. And then we just go through and literally just select the next field. Say, for example, policy number was not automatically picked up. We could basically click on policy number, click on field label, click on policy number, and then we say, actually, the value is this value here. And actually, the OCR engine is intelligent enough to say, well, actually, I can see this number or this piece of text here, which is on the same plane as the field. And given also the fact that that's a kind of repeated kind of structure across the document, it recognizes that's probably the data that you want to extract. But of course, if you didn't want to extract that, you wanted to extract something else or draw a line around the actual data you want to extract, you could do that also. But it's intelligent enough to actually realize that.
So we talk a lot about training artificial intelligence and things like that. So here you're telling me that, you uploaded this document, you already had these fields defined. The IQBot went and said, okay, policy number, this must be the value. And then you just had to say, yes, that's correct.
Correct. That's right. Yeah. For simple, simple documents, I'll rephrase that. For well-structured documents, then a lot of this happens automatically. It automatically knows that it's very likely that that's the data you want. If the document is not so well-structured, you might have to then go in and actually start to do a little bit more work around, well, actually, I need to manually select certain areas, which is actually the data I want to extract. And then the algorithm then starts to learn that process. Okay. And the more documents you upload, the more the confidence levels get to a point where it becomes straight through processing as opposed to exception processing, where you might have to get somebody to manually go in and correct or complete the extraction and then move the document along.
So that was my next question. As we're training these these AI and intelligent automation tools, I mean, what's the volume? With this is a very well structured document, so the volume is probably pretty low. But on average, what's the volume that it would take to get to a really good confidence interval for straight through processing?
It really depends on the document. I mean, if you've got documents where the structure isn't consistent, you may find that you're having to manually intervene and keep on effectively manually completing that extraction. And it will get to a point, and it does depend, but it will get to a point where it said, I've seen this document enough that I now have a high enough confidence that I'm going to automatically map those fields and extract it, and I'm confident enough that actually that's going to work. But it really does depend on the volume. It depends on the structure of the document as well, how well it's structured and how consistently it's structured as well.
Well, I feel like I'm living in the future already, so.
Well, yeah. So what I'm also going to show you next, how to set up a learning instance from scratch. Okay. So what I'm going to do first is go back to learning instances. And I'm going to select new instance. So let's call this IQBot demo. Okay. So what are we going to do? We're going to select the document type. So you can see down here, we have got our domains. So our domain, these are the domains that I've uploaded using the REST API, and I showed you kind of the JSON structure before of those. So they're already in the system, so they can be reused, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that domain. The primary language of this particular instance is going to be English, but as we've seen before, we support both English and Portuguese in these domains, so those two are available. Then what we're going to do is we're going to upload a document. So let's to here, let's go to documents, and let's pick a contract of insurance document. So you can see down here we've got all of our form fields. These are part of the domain. You can choose to add additional fields if you wish to do so. Your domain may represent a core of information, but you may also have some documents which has other information that is different across different documents. So you can add additional fields there. If you weren't using a domain that you uploaded, you can actually define all of the fields in this very screen here. So basically you'd have an option to add all the fields that you wanted to, but we're going to go with this approach. Some advanced options. So there are, in fact, different engines you can select as well. So we're going to use Tesseract, which is part of the product. It also supports Abby and Microsoft and Google Vision, etc., etc. And what that allows you to do, different OCR engines have different, I suppose, strengths in how they are able to extract data from different types of documents. Okay, so if you've got a very specific use case and you find that actually Abby is better at extracting that information more consistently, then you've got the option to actually select that. But we're just going to go with the default for the moment. So we're going to create the instance, and that's now going to upload the document, and it's going to analyze that document and try and automatically map as many fields as it can between the document and the domain that we've uploaded.
Really great animation, makes you feel like you're inside of a brain.
It does, yeah, all the neurons and stuff like that. Yeah, it's all. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into train. So we're now in the training aspect. It's very similar to what we saw before when I was editing the existing one. So if we pick on, for example, choice of law and jurisdiction, it's automatically, this is all in alphabetical order, that's why I'm picking the top one there. it's automatically, as I said before, recognize the fact that actually the data is on the same plane, and actually the data for all the other fields kind of align in the same way. So it's able to actually recognize the fact that it's very likely that's the data you want to extract. And the same for conditions and limits of liabilities, etc. But it's also come down to things like policy period. Okay, so we've got policy period here, but we've got policy period from and to. So it's kind of data split up into two kind of parts. So our label for this, we are going to pick from, and our value, in fact, it's automatically done it. I didn't even have to do anything. It's automatically said, well, actually the 1st of January 2020 is likely that's the piece of data that's going to be associated with that label. So that's now completed the policy period from. Policy period to, exactly the same, click on the label, and I'm going to click on to, click on, in fact, it did exactly the same thing. Before I even had a chance to get there, it's done that, okay? So you can see now, as we go down, we start to actually complete these mappings. So let's just quickly complete that. So premium total, I believe, is further down here, possibly, if I can remember correctly. Premium total is here. So let's click on, the field label is total, and the value is 44,000 euros. Automatically pick that up. And then underlying policies or limits is in fact this one here. And the value is this one here. So we've now completed all of those mappings. Then what we can do is we can then see the extraction results. And what this is doing is it's generating a CSV file, or you can generate a CSV file, sorry for this, you can export that. But what it's doing is it's giving you a view of the data it would put in that CSV file. So you can see here, and you can check that actually it's extracted all that information correctly, which it has, okay? And like I said, you can download the CSV file. You can view that if you wish to do so. And this is exactly the data that we saw in the demo when we actually viewed that information that we had extracted from IQbot. Then we go back to training. And then what we can do now is we can save that, and we can save and send that to production. If we are confident that's as we want it, we can then send that to production and set the learning instance to production. So we've put the bot into production. We're now putting the learning instance into production. And then that's available to integrate with A2019.
This makes it seem like when a document changes, it's not that heavy of a lift to go train your training instance.
No, it's not. And the tooling makes it, like I said before, it kind of abstracts out a lot of the complexity. So actually it makes it, I'm not going to say easy because nothing's ever easy, but it makes it much easier to actually bring in new documents and retrain those if you've got, more fields that are picked, because documents always, evolve over time.
Yeah.
So, yes, you may need to add more fields and retrain it, but it does make it, as easy as it can be. The biggest problem that you have with all OCR engines is the complexity of documents. A document, not so much complexity, but the structure, you'll get to a point where no OCR engine could ever extract the information because it's just such a jumbled mess. So there's always that to consider as well. But yes, to answer your question, it is, I think IQbot makes it as easy as it could ever be.
Well, you as a artificial intelligence expert / RPA expert made it look really easy. I understand that there's years of training behind you, so we'll let you continue to do this. I'm never going to attempt it. So let's
You'll
go.
be fine.
Yeah, let's go connect it.
Okay, so what I'm going to do next, I may have to re-log in here, so let me just log out and log back in again. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to create a very simple bot, and I'm going to show you the commands that we would use to integrate with our learning instances. So I'll go into my bots, go to sample bots, Assurance claims, and I'm just going to create a bot. So we're not necessarily going to run this bot, but I'm just going to show you the configuration needed. And it's actually very, very simple. So let's IQ bots. So there are two actions or commands that we can use. First of all, down here is upload document, and then there's download all documents. So upload document, if we drag that onto the canvas, the first thing we can do is we can select the learning instances. So these are the learning instances that are set to production. In fact, this is the one that we just created. Okay, if it was still in staging, it wouldn't appear. But we can select that. Okay. Then what we can do is we can define the path to the file that we want to upload. So typically what you would do in this situation, you'd have a directory for the files. So for example, we might then put in a loop. Slight mouse trouble there we go. So we can say here, for example, we are going to say for each file in a folder. Okay, so for example, it might be C:temp is the actual path, okay, where our files are. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable called file details. And that's going to loop around that folder called temp, and it's going to put all the files that it's found in there into the file details. And then what we can do here is we can say, for example, C:temp/ our file details. So the name of the file. Now you put other kind of checks and balances in here, you know, checking it's the right file type and all that kind of stuff. But for the purposes of just showing you kind of the basics really, and the extension. So what we're doing here is we're saying that for each file in that folder, which is where our CSV files would have been, our PDF files would reside, for example, that we've downloaded from our email inbox, we're going to upload that document to this IQbot learning instance. Then what happens, as I said before, it's an asynchronous process, so that gets queued up in the server. And at some point in the future, the results of that will be made available. Okay, so you've got to architect your bots in such a way that you upload the PDF files, and then you have a bot which might be scheduled, say, once every 5 minutes, for example, is then checking to see whether there are any results, and if there are, then we move further down the process. So you would do that by using this download all documents task. So we're going to select our learning instance. So what we can do here now is download the results from IQbot based on the different statuses that are available. So if a document can successfully have its data extracted, we can download the CSV files that contain that information that we've seen earlier in the demo. But there's also other statuses as well. So for example, if a document couldn't have its data extracted and somebody's intervened by going into IQbot and they've actually determined that the data simply isn't there, they can mark the document as invalid. And what that does is it allows you to then pull down those invalid documents and actually take an exception path in the process. So it could be that you've downloaded all the invalid documents, you'll get the PDF that was originally uploaded, and you can then attach that to an email and automatically send an email to an operative who can then deal with that, as part of a manual process. And similar for things like, if you try to upload documents that have not yet been classified or have not yet been trained, we can download those documents and again take an exception path. So we're just going to select success. If you wanted to process all of those, you would have a different instance of this command for each of those. Then what we can do is we can then specify the path where we want these, these outputs or these downloads to actually appear in. And that's essentially it. It's two commands, very, very simple to wire up. and very simple to use. It's just making sure you understand that it's asynchronous and that, you know, it's not a linear process. It's not something that you can just call one command and then download the documents the next. You've got to consider that they may take some time to process through IQBot and then be made available later. But that's essentially how you wire it up to an RPA bot.
Yeah, and I would say that your experience in creating those exception paths of invalid or unsuccessful is really helpful as well. So thank you for teaching us about how to create an IQ bot, how to train it, and how to actually wire it into a bot for use. This was a really great demo.
Okay, thank you.
Well, have a great rest of your day, and thank you for joining us.
You too, thank you.